Hey everybody, my name is Jim Farmer. I'm the festival director of Arellano Film. Thanks so much everybody who joined us this year. It was a very successful year. It was our first year as a hybrid. We had films in theater, we had films virtual as well. And one of our popular shorts programs, as always, was our horror shorts program. And the winner of this year's Best Horror Short Audience Award was Griffica, and I'm very happy to have the director of Griffica with us today, CJ Arellano. So thanks so much for joining us, CJ.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much. So we saw our programmers watched this film this summer, and we all loved it. We could not wait to program it and watch it with an audience. It was really great to see it on an audience. And your lead actor was here to talk about the film. So thanks so much for submitting it and making it part of our festival. How did this film come up for you?
Sure. Really, how it came up for me is I was so bored during quarantine. That is the true answer. I'm a freelance writer, director, editor, and of course, like once March 2020 hit, work just stopped. So I just wanted to keep busy, of course, as we all did. I started working from home, and my boyfriend Jonathan started working from home. And, we love each other, but something about constant cohabitation, you just start to drive each other a little wild. And that seemed to be a universal experience for other couples that I talked to as well. And so I devised this horror short, just wanting to explore, just seeing a partner in a different light by virtue of being around them all the time. That was the seed idea. And of course it evolved into something, a very fantastical supernatural story. And I'm really happy with how it came out.
Those who have not seen Griffica, it's about a young man who believes that his boyfriend is a demon. It's very good. It's very funny. It has some dark elements as well. But I'm just curious, when your boyfriend saw this for the first time, how did he react?
He's like, oh no, I denied. I went behind that fiction curtain. I said, it's just fiction. It's just fiction. They're fictional characters. This is, maybe inspired by us, maybe inspired by other couples. So he's been so supportive throughout the whole thing.
What I like about this film a lot is that there's such a nice balance between, is the main character really onto something? Is his boyfriend a demon? Or is he just overreacting, reading things? But can you talk about that fine balance you have to draw in this film?
Sure, yeah. That turned out to be a huge challenge of writing the film, a challenge that I was really excited to, hopefully meet. When you're writing something that is from the point of view of an unreliable narrator, you're essentially writing two narratives on top of each other. You're writing what he thinks is happening, and you're writing what objectively might also be happening. You're writing sort of these two parallel realities in tandem, but that is the kind of narrative that really fascinates me. In Stephen King's book, Danse Macabre, he talks about the evil that comes from within and the evil that comes from without. Evil that comes from within is psychological. It's the dark night of the soul. The evil that comes from without is, aliens from space or demons from hell. And while I think Demons from Hell is very fascinating in that cosmic horror sense, it really is, evil within that fascinates me, because that's what we deal with every day.
Exactly. So talk to me a little bit about the genre. Is this a genre that you've always been attracted to?
Yeah, ever since I was a kid, I started out light with Goosebumps books and Are You Afraid of the Dark, and eventually graduated to The X-Files before finally going in deep with Scream, Halloween, The Exorcist. So yeah, the genre has been a key love of mine for a very long time. And I think a lot of it does have to do with my queer identity. One of the horror movies that I really related to in high school was Dracula's Daughter, because it's about Dracula's daughter, and she, is struggling with her identity as a vampire, right? And she's wondering, why am I this way, before, finally accepting it. And at the time, I had no idea that it was widely understood to be a queer narrative. I just knew that I related to it, right? And so I think there is something that's very particular about the horror genre, where writers are able to grapple with darkness and find beauty within it. I think that that is very tied to the queer experience.
That leads into my next question, because when I was growing up, I fell in love with John Carpenter's Halloween, and and I've always been such a huge fan of the genre. But why do you think that queer people love horror so much?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think you know, we identify with a monster, right? Like James Whale is one of my all-time favorite filmmakers.
Mhm.
He did Bride of Frankenstein. He did Frank. Don't tell anyone this, but except that this is going public. But I kind of prefer Frankenstein over Bride of Frankenstein. That's kind of like sacrilege in queer horror circles. But I think especially Frankenstein, is like the first time in movie history, one of the first times where we're really identifying and sympathizing with the monster, with the outsider. And so I think that outsider narrative, that is very tied to what we experience so often in the queer community. And I'm happy to see that that's changing. We're finally flipping the script at long last. I'm really excited about properties like Fear Street on Netflix. If you haven't caught the Fear Street trilogy, it's amazing. And now Chucky, the Chucky TV show, has like a gay protagonist. So, we've dealt with this outsider narrative for so long, and horror has gotten us through like the toughest times. And now I really feel like only now, as in the 2020s, we are finally taking charge of the genre and telling our stories once and for all.
Are there any horror films that maybe are under the radar that you've liked that maybe other people aren't aware of?
Oh my gosh. The one horror film that I think might have slipped under the radar is called In Fabric, 2019. It's like a Black horror comedy. It's very dark, but it's also really funny. It's about a killer dress.
I have not.
I'm
I've not seen it, but I've heard about it.
Oh my gosh, it's so good. It's so strange, and I think that it hits all those right notes for me. It's weird, it's funny, and it's really gorgeous. It's gorgeous in a really strange way. So yes, I would sound the alarms on In Fabric.
Have you ever seen? I love talking to people who like horror films, as mentioned. Have you ever seen Black Christmas, the original?
No, I haven't.
You should watch it. You should watch it. Watch it next week.
I know. Yeah. Okay.
The sequel was not very good, but the original, had Margot Kidder and Olivia Hussey. Keir Dullea is very, very, and it's one of the scariest movies I've ever seen. So
I love holiday horror though. I love holiday
Right.
horror. Krampus, I feel doesn't get enough love, but I'm here for it.
Exactly. So tell us what's next for you and what's next for Griffica.
Sure. Well, Griffica is doing its thing on the fest scene, so I'm really excited about it. Of course, my next project is a queer horror feature.
Yay.
It's called Case Unsolved, and it's about this unsolved mysteries like show that is cursed, and so it comes to life. So all of the serial killers and all the supernatural folklore monsters come out of this cursed 90s television show and terrorize this gay couple who just want to get on with their lives. And so they're the only ones who can fight this cursed TV show. And you can learn more about it at caseunsolved.com.
Oh, great. Sounds interesting. So final question. I mean, you mentioned COVID had you and your boyfriend literally together all the time, but how did it affect you professionally?
Yeah, well, it was hard to find work. Like I didn't have my first remote directing gig until like that October of 2020. Other than that, it really was, it was kind of a boon in some ways, because the remote editing gigs that I found like really cranked up. Suddenly everyone learned how to edit remotely, send hard drives, upload footage to remote servers. So COVID's been hard, and then it's also been interesting. And the other thing that it did, especially like those first few months of COVID, was the content that I was creating was all COVID related, right? It was all like sad COVID documentaries, and it was an election year too. So I did a lot of election commercials about COVID. So did the work dry up for a time, but then it came back and it just changed.
Good.
Yeah.
The film is Griffica. It won Aldo Films Audience Award for Best Horror Short this year. And our audience loved it. Thank you so much for sharing this film with us, and thanks for talking with us this afternoon, CJ Arellano. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Jim. Appreciate it.
Talk soon. Thanks. Bye.
All right, bye.